Okay, so now that we understand that there are two types of feedback, how should I know which to provide my students with? When should I use delayed feedback? When should I use on-the-spot feedback? Well, the decision depends on many things, to be honest. It includes the focus of the activity, the nature of the mistake, and the learner's age. When we think of the focus of the activity, what comes to your mind? If you're thinking of anything like, oh, if it's grammar or if it's pronunciation, if I'm talking about reading, writing, anything like that, that is not really the idea here. When we think of the focus of the activity, we're thinking of two words, either fluency or accuracy. Every activity that we propose in the classroom is either fluency oriented or accuracy oriented. Fluency oriented activities, they help learners feel more confident. The idea is that they speak with ease, that it's a natural speech. So any kind of activity that you're thinking of that involves speaking naturally, for example, a role play or games in general, right? Storytelling, if students have to, if I start a story, then my peer continues the story, and so it goes, anything like that. Any sort of discussion, let's say you ask students to answer 3 questions in pairs, anything like that, or debates. All of these, they focus on fluency. I'm not saying that there isn't any sort of feedback to be given here, but it's something that we have to have in mind. Okay, so fluency activities, they aim at students becoming more confident, whereas accuracy-oriented tasks, they help learners focus on the correct use of that specific structure. So if you're thinking of drilling, any sort of drilling, let's say students are learning the verbs in the past, and then you keep repeating the words like visited or worked or traveled, anything like that, or even if it's just colors, you're helping them understand that it's a blue pencil. Uh, this is a white notebook, anything like that. If it's sentence stress or just a specific word, any sort of drilling is accuracy oriented. Yeah, gap fill of any sort. Yeah, the students have to fill in the blanks with anything. Sentence transformation in the same way. So let's say students they learn the passive voice and they have to transform into active voice, anything like that. This is also accuracy oriented. If you give them a sheet with sentences that contain mistakes and they need to find the mistakes, for example, this is also accuracy oriented. So have this in mind when you're thinking of the type of activity that you're providing students with. When you plan your lesson, the tasks that you be giving them, are they fluency oriented or accuracy oriented? They're both valid, right? And great to use in the classroom, but they require a different kind of feedback. Because when you're thinking of that, then fluency focused activities, such as the ones that we mentioned before, then we should focus on delayed feedback. They usually work better because, again, if you keep interrupting learners all the time, you might break the flow, the natural flow of speech, and students might even become hesitant because every time they attempt to say something, then you interrupt because they made a mistake. So if you're thinking of accuracy-focused activities, on the other hand, then on-the-spot feedback might work better because the focus is to help solidify the understanding of the target language and also prevent bad habits from happening. So they have to understand that they have to use, that they have to say, for example, it's a blue pencil and not a pencil blue, for instance, or anything like that. So this, the type of activity is very important. When you're thinking of the lesson plan, think of the type of activity and then think of the type of feedback that you're providing them with. The second aspect that should be taken into consideration when deciding if it's delayed or on-the-spot feedback is the nature of the mistake. Is it something, is it a breakdown in the communication? Is it something that leads to confusion? If if my student says something, then nobody will understand what he's trying to say, or I don't understand what he's trying to say, for example, then it needs to be addressed right away. Yeah, so the conversation keeps on track. So people will be, the students will be able to communicate better. Now, if it's just a minor mistake, maybe delayed feedback will work better, right? Because again, you avoid interrupting, yeah, the flow of communication, the flow of speech that they have. So it's very important that you understand that. If it's just a minor thing, then delayed feedback usually works better. The third thing that we mentioned was the learner's age. If you think of young learners, for example, they need very careful feedback because they have to be motivated and confident all the time. So on the spot feedback works well for basic phrases that you're teaching them, or chunks of language, or the vocabulary if they're given in a positive manner. For fluency activities like games, for instance, then delayed feedback usually works better because it doesn't interrupt the activity in itself. Yeah. Now, teenagers, they usually can handle a mix of both. Yeah. They are usually more open to the idea of on-the-spot feedback. They understand the need for it. Yeah. And they can also reflect on on whatever you suggest during delayed feedback. All of this is very important because all of this is also planned. Whenever you're planning your lesson, you should be also able to reflect. If I am proposing this type of activity for my students, what kind of feedback should I be giving them? What exactly am I going to provide them with? Is it going to be on the spot or delayed? Some teachers imagine that feedback just happens during the lesson, and then we have to suddenly decide what to do. But it's not really the case. This is something that can be thought of, yeah, before when we are planning the lesson. When we come back in the next video, we'll be talking about some techniques for delayed feedback. All right, so I'll see you there.